Hello, everybody. Waiting for Ken and a side order of fries. I don't even know what that means. Hi, how's it going? Good to see everybody here. Welcome to the pre-babble portion of the show. The pre-babble. It's not pre-babble, it's pre-babble. Somebody pointed out to me the other day that so I made a clock for this show a long time ago. And let me show you what right there, all the different things that we got, right? And one of the things in there is pre-babble, which is now. And then there's I do the tease and the day and the date, and I do the first story, and then I do a thing in the middle where I ask you to do something, and then I do the second story, and then I do feedback if there is any, but there isn't any today. So hit me up on what do you call it, Twitter, if you want to do the feedback thing. Leave a comment with this video or send me an email, info@macosken.com. And with pre-babble out of the way, why don't we do a thing? Actually, why don't I do one more thing first? All right. Now let's do a thing. Responding to a letter and playing ball in France. It is Tuesday, the 1st of December, 2020, and this is macOS Ken Live. Do they play ball in France? Kind of an interesting thing, and we'll talk about that in the second half of the show. Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Ray. Thank you very much for joining me for this thing that we do every Monday through Friday, as long as there's not a holiday in the middle. 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. It is called macOS Ken Live, built off of the daily show that I do that's not live. I mean, it's live when I do it, but it doesn't go out live. macOS Ken, which if you don't know about that, go to any place you get podcasts and search for macOS Ken and find out more about that. Big governmental show today. Second half of the show, we will talk about France's game of stick and stick. I know I said they're going to play ball. I can't tell if there's a ball there or not, but we will find out. First half of the show, though, there is a group that has written to President-elect Joe Biden, kind of congratulating him. They congratulate him in the first line. They actually say, congratulations on your historic election victory. And then they say, don't talk to tech. Don't talk to people at tech at all, is what they say. I believe the company is called, or the organization, is called Public Citizen. And they are a collection of 33 different groups that are taking today to urge Biden to reject big tech appointments to his cabinet. That's what the header on the letter actually says that they wrote. I almost just don't even want to read the letter. It's fine. I mean, it is exactly what it should be. We know now the name Public Citizen, assuming that that is the name, because they have written a letter to the incoming administration saying, listen, big tech is bad news. Don't talk to them. And it's the kind of thing that I hate. Partly because I'm a believer in tech. Not every tech organization is great. Not every technology is great. Not every technology can change the world. We don't need to disrupt bathrobes. We don't need a subscription service to everything, I don't think. And not everything has to be something that you can only get online. We'll get to it. I'm going to read large portions of this letter, which I think is kind of boring, but I don't know how else to do this. Otherwise, it's just me talking. You're like, why is he talking about that? The below undersigned organizations are a broad coalition that represent millions of Americans concerned about the concentrated power of big tech companies. We look forward to working with your administration to address the harms posed by big tech. As you prepare for the presidential transition, we write to urge you to reject the influence of these corporations by committing to exclude big tech executives, lobbyists, lawyers, and consultants from your administration. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft once promised innovation and opportunity, and while they continue to provide many remarkable products, They now represent serious threats to privacy, democracy, innovation, and Americans' economic well being. Each of these companies have developed predatory business practices that harvest user data for profit. Over the last few years, we have seen how Facebook and Google irresponsibly wield immense influence over democratic elections without oversight or accountability. Despite the myth that Silicon Valley is rife with entrepreneurs and small businesses capable of disrupting entire industries, bathrobes, I'm telling you, these companies have killed rather than fostered innovation. And during the worst health crisis in recent history, Amazon has taken advantage of Americans struggling with the pandemic, tripling their profits on price gouged essential goods. Those three companies are the three that you will hear absolutely here is something that they have done wrong. Everything that you'll hear about Apple and Microsoft, actually, you might have heard the only mention you're going to hear about Microsoft in that letter. I can't remember. The only thing you'll hear about Apple is they were being investigated by the House. The thing that Cicilline was doing earlier this summer, the one where they got the heads of Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Apple virtually on Capitol Hill to basically yell about the things that they wanted to yell about and go away. So that's it. Now, we talked earlier this year about the fact that there are definite concerns about anti-competitive practices in the App Store. There are concerns. Doesn't mean they exist. They should be investigated. The letter talks about the fact that Facebook and Amazon, I believe it is, spend more on lobbying than any other groups in Washington. That does seem serious. Lobbying, it seems to me, I don't really understand lobbying because I don't understand how it works. You have to come, you have to schmooze. There are laws under which you can schmooze, but if you got enough money, you can go ahead and come and schmooze. You have to register to say that's what you're doing, but then you're allowed to influence because you signed a piece of paper that said, listen, I'm going to be spending a lot of money with your people to try to influence you. In the meantime, there are other organizations that can't. I think the biggest problem I have with this letter is the same problem that I have with almost anything. To say an organization needs to be shut out because of who that organization is or what that organization is. Look, if you're talking about the KKK or the Nazi Party, I'm with you on that. If you're talking about here was the weirdest thing that I was thinking about. Government can benefit from knowledgeable use of big data. You know who knows how to use big data really well? Facebook. They use it, I think, detrimentally a lot of times. That would seem to be true. That would seem to be the case. But it's possible that there is somebody in Facebook that could do good. I don't know what the point of this letter is, honestly. Maybe they actually want to make sure that anybody who has worked in any kind of substantive way, for big tech has absolutely no place in Washington. Maybe that is their plan. Maybe their plan is to get the things that they are concerned about noticed. I said earlier, we now know who Public Citizen is. I did not before. Talking to a friend of mine, she was like, oh yeah, I follow them online. Okay. So they already knew who Public Citizen was. I had no idea. Now here we are talking about them. Big tech companies already have significant power and influence in Washington. The companies have massively increased lobbying and campaign spending in recent years. Here's the part I was talking about. Facebook and Amazon each spend more on lobbying than any other company in the country. Well, they can't each spend more than any other company because one of them has to spend more, don't they? Not saying it's a factual error. In recent years, both the public and policymakers alike have begun to see them for what they are, the largest and most valuable companies in the world that prioritize the pursuit of profit at the expense of American health, welfare, and democracy. In fact, recent polling conducted by Pew Research Center showed that nearly half of Americans want to see big tech regulated. Another way to write that sentence is less than half of Americans want to see big tech regulated. For the record, I want to see big tech regulated. I am not a no regulation person. I believe in seatbelts. I believe in guardrails. I'm that kind of guy. I believe they apply to society. I think there should be regulation. I don't think you go in and say anybody who's ever done this isn't allowed to do anything else. Some of the best and brightest minds have turned up in Silicon Valley. Some of them have. Try to get them to do something good. And I'm not saying anybody who works in Silicon Valley is doing anything bad. I'm saying try to win them over. I've been watching The West Wing lately. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to watch The West Wing because it fills you with hope and idealism. But the characters on that show, and I know it's happened in real life too, people are sometimes called out of the private sector for public service. If anybody wants to hire me away from my podcast, by the way, to go sit around in Washington and complain, I'm your guy. Give me a call. You know where to find me. I don't know. I got I have nothing cogent on this except to say, could we not just close the door? Could we not just close the door? And look, public citizen has no power. They are not able to write that rule for the Biden administration and say, that's it. Nobody, no how, no way. He's got so many insanely tight needles to thread or small needles to thread. It's insane. You've got people already, a month and a half before the inauguration, basically saying there's no way anybody he's going to nominate is going to get through. He's got a long road to hoe and a tough road to hoe. I'm pretty sure I'm using one of those phrases correctly. I wasn't impressed. You remember, I wasn't impressed with Cicilline earlier this summer. That committee basically just seemed to be, we're going to score political points by calling these guys to the carpet, if for no other reason to show that we have the power to call these guys to the carpet. And then once we get them here, we're going to tell them that we don't like them. We're going to pretend to ask them questions. Mostly, we as Democrats are going to fight with the Republicans, and we as Republicans are going to fight with the Democrats, and we're just going to have these guys here sitting and watching it, and then they can go home. To just come out against big tech, to paint them all with the same brush. Maybe I shouldn't let it. Maybe I shouldn't even think about it because it's just an easy way to get your name in the paper, I suppose. And yet here I am talking about it. So good job, public citizen. If you did nothing else, you got me to talk to 11 and a half people. I'm counting myself as the half person, by the way. Coming up in just a moment, we'll talk about the weird thing that came out of France yesterday as well. Continuing on the government, kick, push, what have you. Most of what France said, not so weird. We'll get to that in a second. Before we get to that, though, it's the part of the show where I say, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you? I'm going to ask you again to be my street team. If you can see me right now, either live on YouTube or later on YouTube, or if you can hear this as the audio podcast, can you please do me a favor and let other people know about it too? macOS Ken Live was a show like 9 years ago, and then it stopped. And this is a different version of that show. And I don't think this version is the last version of that show. I don't think it's always just going to be me. My hope is eventually I'll, bring on somebody else, maybe a guy, maybe a gal, maybe a rotating crew of people. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'd like to grow this show more. I'd like to add more to this show. And I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Do I go ahead and try to add more people without the growth, hoping that that will make growth? Or do I go ahead and wait for the growth to happen and then add more? Well, right now, the thing I have is me. So I'm going to do the thing that I can do. And then I'm going to ask you if you could do a part as well, which is basically just let people know about this show. If you could hit, I hate asking, if you could hit like, that would be great. If you could review this podcast on iTunes, that would be great. Because the last reviews for this podcast are 9 years old. Nine. And of course, if you could hit share everywhere, and that's like, if you see me tweet about it, if you could retweet it, that would be great. I feel terrible asking, but that's the thing I have to ask today. So if you could help me grow macOS Ken Live, that would be great. And then there'd be more people in the chat room, just like you people talking in the chat room right now. to whom I will also talk later. I mean, in addition to the talking I'm doing, yeah. If you could be the macOS Ken live street team, that'd be fantastic. And thank you. Let's go to France. I went to France once, went to Paris. It was great. I hope to go back there sometime. There are all kinds of places I've never been. Australia, New Zealand, Montana. I was gonna say Wyoming, but I've actually been to Wyoming. I drove through part of it one time very briefly. Can't figure out what map I was following that took me through Wyoming to get where I was going, but there we are, or were, and I was by myself. Anyway, let's go to France, I think is what I was saying. From trying to keep businesses from influencing government to government trying to influence businesses. The thing out of France was weird, and I'm not talking about the taxation thing. France feels like Apple and other big tech companies are generating a lot of revenue and not kicking enough back in taxes. And so rather than wait for the international community to come up with a plan, France was like, yeah, nuts to this, except in French. We're going to go ahead and start taxing them. And that's fine. They're a big country. They can do what they want as far as that's concerned. The thing that's weird to me is the Tech for Good call, which I assume sounds better in French than it does in English. This is an organization or a coalition, I guess, that France is putting together. Google, Microsoft, and Facebook. This is from Apple Insider. Google, Microsoft, and Facebook have signed up to a new Tech for Good call, a French initiative that includes principles about taxation. Amazon has declined to collaborate, however, and Apple is reportedly still in discussions. First of all, I think it's funny that Apple Insider used the word collaborate. Play along might have been. So it's supposed to work on taxation, privacy, combating hate crime online, and other such issues, all of which are, notable and laudable. Companies agreed to contribute fairly to the taxes in countries where they operate, a presidential spokesperson said. They also agree to block child sexual abuse material, terrorist or extreme violence of online content, and to support the ecological transition. Nothing about any of that sounds bad, except it should be reminded that France just enacted a taxation that all of these companies weren't really in favor of because they were waiting for the international community to get together. Now, it's smart for those companies to wait for the international community to get together because they know the international community will not do that anytime soon. They know that they're like, well, they're on the stove, but they're probably a back burner set to low. Either way, though, France is like, hey, why don't you come over and talk? And, three of them did. And Amazon's like, no, messy. And apparently Apple is still in discussion. Here's the part that was weird to me. A presidential spokesperson was quoted in the Apple Insider piece as saying, the goal is also to observe objectively those who decide to play ball and align their interest with individuals and societies and those who stay out of this joint movement. That sounds threatening. Doesn't that sound threatening? That sounds threatening. I don't know. I mean, it sounds, and what's weird is, I mean, they've already turned the screw. I think I said on macOS Ken, this sounds less like carrot and stick and more like stick and stick. What are you offering? Now, again, it could be like the public citizen thing. And again, I'm not saying public citizen isn't sincere in what they're saying, but certainly one of the things that public citizen did today was get itself noticed by the Biden administration, by people outside of the Biden administration, by anybody who's paying any attention. They roused rabble. They raked muck. They got themselves noticed today. And maybe this presidential spokesman is trying to do the same thing. I mean, maybe he is saying, look, we're serious about this. You play ball with us, or we'll note that you did not play ball with us. What's the benefit? It's kind of funny that you got public citizen here in the state saying, don't talk to tech. And you've got the ruling party in France saying, you better talk to us. It's a crazy old world, isn't it? Let's all go to France. What do you say? Oh, well, we can't right now, but let's all go someday. I know a great cafe we can go to. Kind of touristy, but I was a tourist. And then we'll go to the Eiffel Tower, also very touristy. And pretty much everything I know in Paris is touristy. Oh, we go to Disneyland one day, maybe. I think that's going to do it for today. If you're in the chat room, please stay in the chat room. I will be by momentarily. If you're not here live, I would love it if you would join us live sometime, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. We do that Monday through Friday, talking about news of the day, and it would be great if you were here when it happened live. In a few minutes tomorrow morning, macOS Ken tomorrow morning. We'll do this again tomorrow afternoon, and I will talk to you soon. And now, friends, we enter the post-babble portion of the show. That's not about you, by the way. That's about me. That's about how I view my words. There's show, and then there's babble. Well, no, there's babble, and then there's show, and then there's babble. Hang on a second. I'm going to get stuff out of my way and grab my coffee and actually drink my coffee and drop my pen. He's back, by the way, in case you're wondering. Yeah, this is his 17th year in service. Bought this in 2003. It says so right on the bottom. I would show you what it says on the bottom, but it's full of coffee. All right, the clock on the clock says post-babble. Let me grab my glasses and see what we got. There's Hank, there's Frank. You guys should travel together. You should also maybe start a podcast, the Hank and Frank Show, or the Frank and Hank Show. Frank and Hank. That'd be great. And your album art could be like a two-headed thing with both of the heads sewn on. Neither one's the original. What's that about? There's Brian, there's Webb, there's Roger, there's John, there's Leah, there's Chuck. Hey, Chuck. There's Eugene. Okay, I think that's all the hellos. There's Donna. That wasn't all the hellos. If you washed your hands, poke the like button. Frank Petrie, everybody, keeping it topical and helping out the show. Ha. Yeah, somebody was asking me. I started listening. Nate says that he heard a story about Belgium on the news that prompted his tweet. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, "Where did you get that Belgium thing?" Nate knows. I feel certain Nate knows. It's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's the second most obscene word in the galactic language, I think, right? And Zavod Beeblebrock says it all the time. Belgium, man, Belgium. Echo-enabled rubber ducks. I like that idea. Frank wants a macOS Ken bathrobe. It was that was actually from a tweet, and I wish I could remember who it was that said it. But they were like, 1998. The promise of the internet was free education for all and growing opportunity for everybody. And then in 2019, it was we're disrupting bathrobes. I think it's one of the most hilarious lines. Yeah. Well, again, Bill, though, I'm sorry. So Bill is saying if you're going to kick out tech, you should probably kick out Chiquita, Dole, Boeing, Lockheed, General Dynamics. I started thinking about that, actually. I have no doubt that there is undue influence exerted by business over government. But at the same time, My complaint about what happened earlier this year with Congress was not that they were eyeing tech, it was that they weren't talking to tech. It was that they were, talking to people who were pissed and then coming back to tech and say, "Well, we talked to 3 people who said that you're terrible." Those 3 people are never gonna get them on the news, but bringing Apple up, bringing Amazon up, bringing Facebook and Google up and say, "We heard you're terrible," that's gonna get them noticed. Fact of the matter is they don't know how tech runs. Fact of the matter is I don't know how tech runs either. And I don't think you can just bring in Zuckerberg and say, "Well, how should we do this?" and have him go, "Don't worry, I got ya." But maybe what we need is an actual conversation with the people with whom we're dealing. See also Democrats and Republicans. Yeah, if you can. If you can see both. Sorry. I'd work in a macOS Ken bathrobe all day. Yeah, funny story. I used to until I started this show. It's not true. I have a ridiculous habit of getting dressed, even though we don't go anywhere. Roger. Imagine if tech had made a way to make COVID-19 tracking easier. I see what you did there, Roger. That's kind of amazing, right? I found myself though, and I couldn't really figure out how to talk about this. Do you watch the local news? I don't. I haven't in probably 7 or 8 years, and I lived 2 cities different 7 or 8 years ago. I don't watch the local news, so I think I don't know if you know or not, I'm in California and have been for about a year or 2 now, and never really talked about it a lot, and we can talk sometime about why I didn't. But anyway, I was really, really, really disappointed that California did not get on the whole Apple Google API as far as COVID contact tracing until I think last month. And I haven't seen anything now about, hey, everybody should activate this or everybody should download this. But I don't watch local news. But I can't imagine local news is leading with that every night, even though that would be an easy thing for all of us to do. It would not solve every problem. It would not come close to solving every problem. Washing your hands, wearing a mask, staying in. These would actually come closer to solving all the problems, though they wouldn't solve every problem still. But a majority of people have either an Android device or an iOS device. Well, I don't even know if a majority of people have those. I apologize. But if we could get all the people who do have them to activate that, we might go further towards fixing this. I'm reminded of what Eddie Izzard said about the metric system. He said the US got the metric system for 30 seconds, kind of poked at it, and then threw it away. That feels like where we are right now. It's like, it took us months and months and months and months and months for a number of states across the country. And I don't even think even all of the states or even half the states have it yet. Maybe a little over half. I'm honestly not sure. But okay, so finally we gone ahead and approved this tool, and it's almost like begrudgingly, like, oh, okay, well, fine. Now you have this, but we're not going to promote it. We're not going to say anything about everybody should do it. The amount of time that we blew is depressing. But hey, Bill says he loves all things Sorkin. Frank says The West Wing is brilliant. You're both correct. Yeah, after a while, you do kind of get tired of seeing the same scene repeated different places. But Sports Night, I think, is just an amazing show. And The West Wing is amazing too. The other series that he's done, like Newsroom or The Newsroom and Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, they have moments of brilliance. I understand why they didn't make it. Although I still go back occasionally and watch Studio 60 because I love that series. And then the movies he's written on are great. Although he did write The Social Network, which I kind of don't want to go back and watch because if there's anything in there that makes anything about Zuckerberg lovable, then nobody ever talked to Aaron Sorkin again. That's my public citizen imitation. Chuck says he loves the way that lobbying groups criticize anyone who's using someone else's lobbying group, self-righteous at best, megalomaniacal at worst. And Frank says I should have Siri as a co-host. I curse too much for Siri. I don't think she'd like it. Boo, 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 boo. Where else are we? Is that true, John? Do you know the most obscene word? Douglas Adams put it in the book because nobody knew what it meant. It has been a long time since I've read those books. I have been listening, though. I started listening again last night to the radio plays because I have the first season. Where else are we? Nate says he listened to Ken before Mac OS Ken. I did too. That was a few years ago. Roger says all the YouTube channels ask to like and subscribe their videos. Yeah, but they say it in cool ways, like, smash that like button. That'll be my next sticker. Smash that like button. Can you say muck on Facebook? Yeah, I'll muck it up, Frank. I will. Ooh, Hank says he went to Disneyland Paris one time. Spoke at a tech conference. The park was okay, although Tomorrowland was awesome. It was based on Jules Verne. Yeah, I'd like to see it. I was watching one of the Imagineering shows about Disney Plus. I'm sorry, on Disney Plus about Imagineering, and they talked about the work that went into Euro Disney, which I guess is now called Apple or Disney Paris. Excuse me. Being frank with Franks, but it's Frank and Hank, Frank. Oh, the Anks. Okay. We can't spend a podcast talking about Ken Webb. Just can't do it. You start your podcast and have me on, and then I'll talk about me. Donna loves Eddie Izzard. Everybody loves Eddie Izzard. I mean, not everybody, sure. Arizona doesn't bother to push the COVID tracking either, says Eugene. Yeah, it's kind of depressing. Frank, you got a picture with Eddie Izzard? Okay, I'll tell an Eddie Izzard story, then I have to go. Let me check the rest of this. Yes, the Studio 60 episode, Christmas episode is fantastic. And the Hallelujah episode from The West Wing, honestly, don't remember. I just watched the one, though, where Josh was going through PTSD. Was that Hallelujah? I'm not sure. All right, here's my Eddie Izzard story, and I'm out. So I went to a book signing that he did, not a book signing, a DVD signing, actually. And they said you could only buy 3. They said you could only buy 4. It was at Borders. You could only buy 4 and have him sign them. And then when he got in line, he said, I'm only signing 2. And we were like, well, they told us I bought 4. So he signed them, which is nice. And that'd be a good enough story. It was also a tremendous, just wonderful to hear him speak. And I got to ask him a question. And, it was fun, whatever. I was living in San Francisco at the time. So I think I went to dinner or something after that. And was walking back home. And I lived fairly close to Union Square in San Francisco in a studio apartment that at the time cost $800 a month. I hear now it would only be $3,200 a month. So this will let you know when and all that stuff. And so I walked past a bunch of really neat hotels and, big, bars and stuff on my way home. just as a matter of course. And standing outside of a hotel smoking was Eddie Izzard. And so I called a friend of mine because I had already spoken to him earlier in the day, right? And so I called a friend of mine and I wanted him to talk to her, except um, she wasn't home. So I got her voicemail and I handed him the phone and I said, I'm so sorry. Would you please say something? He was like, hello, who's this? And I was like, no, 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 it's a voicemail. And so he left a very funny voicemail for her and he hung up and I was just like, I shouldn't have bothered you. I'm so sorry. That was the coolest thing you have, whatever. Incredibly nice guy. That was 15 years ago. 15? 16 maybe. Anyway, that's my Izzard story. And it's like I was just there when I was telling you that story. I have no idea how long that took. Right. I got to go turn what we just did, not this part, into a into an audio podcast, and then I've got to work on more podcasts. Thanks everybody. Thank you guys for being here, for sharing this time with me, for sharing this show with other people, all of it. You're swell. We'll talk to you soon.